lights on the airways hum. Hear the tales of where they're from. Stories whispered, not in lies. Jobs they held through changing times.
Welcome to the second live recording of Amplify Your Signal. And honestly, you think that I've been on enough podcasts, I would get the hang of this by now, but definitely not. So I am your amateur podcast host, Nicole Roberts, and this is the podcast where we share the real stories beyond the resume of job seekers and people in transition. Today, I am thrilled to have Larry Anderson with us. He's a free agent newly on the market and is going to be sharing some insights from both his experience as a recruiter and his current journey in transition. We're going to dive into some strategies for improving the hiring process for both candidates and hiring managers. Larry, please introduce yourself, share a little bit about your background, career, journey. Tell us more about you.
Yeah, thank you for having me on the show. Really do appreciate it. I guess a little bit about myself. I live in Atlanta, Georgia. I grew up. For those that know anything about Georgia, I grew up on a Vidalia onion farm as a younger kid. But no, I've been recruiting for the last almost 9 years now, maybe. Yeah, it's been a while. So super excited to really dig into some of the topics that we've discussed we're getting into today. That's all I've got to say to intro. People are going to hear a lot about me through this call, so want to make sure I don't repeat myself too often.
Sure. No, totally understand that. So one thing that fascinates me is kind of how people get to where they are today, what their journey has looked like. What did you want to be when you were a kid?
If the guitar over my shoulder means anything, I wanted to grow up and be a musician.
Mm.
So definitely didn't work out that way. I mean, I even went to the University of Georgia, didn't finish, but I did all of the music requirement classes. I studied classical guitar there. So yeah, that's what I wanted to be. I wanted to be a rock star. Still play. I'm still technically a musician, but I'm not a professional one by any means.
So how did your journey go from wanting to be a rock star to getting into recruiting?
While I was at the University of Georgia, I got this random call about an internship where I could sell educational resources to people door to door in a different state than Georgia. Uh, my first summer I did that summer internship. It was a 100 commission role, but they sent me out to Oklahoma, and it was the rainiest on record summer ever in Oklahoma history. And that's when I started wearing Crocs. That's neither here nor there, but it was my journey to go into, sales. And I like that so much. I did that crazy summer internship for 5 summers. And then once I was done with college, not because I graduated, but because I was done, I continued knocking on doors for another 5 years selling insurance door to door. So I did that for 5 years. And then finally got tired of knocking on doors. And a buddy of mine who I had sold books with during the college internship days was a recruiter, and I reached out to him and said, "Hey, you're a recruiter. Find me a job." Alex Daniels, who's a great friend to this day, he says, "Why don't you come work with me?"
There you go.
And so he was my first foray into recruiting. It was an agency recruiter. He's supporting third-party integrators like Accenture, Worldwide Technology, Sagetti, you name it. Well, that's who we were supporting and hiring, very technical talent across the nation. I got tired of working on a nationwide basis, so moved into a more boutique agency focused on supporting Atlanta-based startups and loved doing that work and was doing that agency side supporting local Atlanta businesses until I had an opportunity to work at Spanx. I don't know if you're familiar with Sarah Blakely.
Love Sarah Blakely.
Yeah, she's great. I didn't report to her or anything. I had 2 interactions with her. Don't let me hype that up too much. But no, one of my best bosses ever. Still keep in touch with her, Emily Forbes. She's married, but she was Emily Steger at the time. Loved working with her, and eventually, they brought me on to support their first CIO at Spanx and fill out their entire tech org. And once that had happened, I didn't want to work on fashion roles. So I left there and started helping a Boston-based startup called ConnectRN. And they're a Series B startup. I helped them grow from, I was 60 employee 67 to over 250 in 11 months. And so that was wild. That was their first recruiter that was brought in. I established all those processes. It was a lot of fun. Loved everybody that I worked with. And then from there, because they started making return to office be a part of their requirements, and I didn't want to move to Boston. I found an opportunity here in Atlanta with Slalom, their consulting firm, but focused more on a regional basis. And then I happened to have my first layoff a year and a half later from Slalom. And that sucked, but it was through that growth that led me to where I am today, where I'm now the organizer of the Atlanta Recruiter Community Meetup. I've learned the value of having a network because I've also experienced a recent layoff again with Infomedia. Where I was a year and a half ago when I got laid off in 2023 by Slalom, I was in a completely different spot network-wise and ability to have opportunities today, and it's all because of my network, and I'm happy to kind of share.
When we chatted before, you shared how you approach your job search, and I thought that it would be super helpful to our audience. What are the 3 key things that you're looking for in a potential opportunity, and how does that guide your decision making?
Yeah, so I know a lot of people, like there's a lot to it, but it always basically boils down to 3 things. And if an opportunity has 2 of these 3 things, I'm interested. And if they have all 3, obviously I'm very interested, right? And so for me, that first pillar would be technical recruiting. I've done almost every other kind of recruiting out there, but the stuff that gets me the most excited to wake up in the morning is tech recruiting. I love talking to software engineers, love talking to infrastructure people, security people, especially, all that stuff just gets me jazzed. The second pillar is I want to be some sort of leadership in the next role, right? And that doesn't necessarily mean people leadership. It can also be process leadership. So if I'm the go-to guy for an entire team and their recruiting needs, that's one way. Or if I'm in charge of the entire recruiting process from an ATS perspective, right? If that's something that where I have ownership and if it needs to get fixed, the buck lands on me kind of situation. That's the kind of process leadership I mean by that. And then the third pillar is internal. I'm not opposed to going back to the agency life, but I do have a couple extra stipulations that come with that. Most of the time, most agencies won't let you come in and be a leader right away. They want you to establish some rapport, and I totally get that. But the other aspect that a lot of agencies want you to have is full desk, and that means where you're recruiting and selling at the same time. And when I hear full
Mhm.
desk, all that means is, hey, we know you've got some clients in your fractional business.
Right.
Why don't you give those to us? And I'm like,
Yeah.
no, I
Yeah.
don't want to do that. So
Right.
I could just do that on my own. Thank you. So
Like, I'm kind of already doing business development for
yeah,
myself. So, yeah. And you get 100% of the proceeds of that.
right,
Uh,
exactly.
it's a novel idea. Another thing that you talked about kind of when we chatted before was the value of behavioral interview training from both the candidate and the hiring manager perspectives. Can you kind of share a little bit about that and why it's so crucial on both sides?
Yeah, I'll actually be starting a newsletter here in the near future. I know I keep saying that, and I've been working on content, but I want to
It happens to me.
predate it, right?
Yeah.
So I want to have a backlog ready, so that way if I fall short one week, I have something ready to go. But essentially, from a candidate perspective, you want to be able to sell yourself in the best light, right? And for candidates, behavioral interviewing is leaning on the STAR interview method, right? STAR is an acronym which stands for situation, task, action, and result. And if you can't explain yourself in that way of, hey, this was the situation, this was the task that I was set to do, these are the actions that I took to complete that task, and this is the result of everything that I did to make that happen, and quantify that, that's what people are looking for, right? And it's the ways you quantify things, one, and it's almost in this order of importance, is one, how much money did you make or save the company? Two, how much time did you save by doing this new process? And then three, at what scale, right? Was your task impacting one person? Was it impacting 10,000 people? Was it a budget of $100? Was it a budget of 100 million? Somewhere in between. So that's what people want to know, especially, if you're talking about all the systems that you're touching, tell us how big those systems are. right? So how many users are on them? How much data is it storing? Things of that nature is what you can quantify when you're answering it. And then taking that same thing, so you're quantifying it on your resume too. So that way you're answering the basic star style questions of those initial, hey, tell me what you did on this project. So now the question becomes, oh, I see you saved a lot of money. Walk me through what was the toughest part of that particular project, or how did that go about starting? So you're adding more context to those questions as opposed to just starting from scratch and wasting a lot of time in the interview, right? From there, from the company perspective, you want to make sure that you have the best opportunity to evaluate all the talent in that interview, because a lot of times you only have two windows of 30 minutes to an hour, and you want to make sure that you're getting the right stuff. All you have is a checklist of yes or no questions. That's not a great interview
No,
process, right?
not at all.
Those aren't going to help anyone, right? So a lot of it is determining, past success will determine future success, or that was one of the best determinations. And if you have a really great answer from a candidate, that might have been an example they had 2-3 years ago. Another great follow-up to that is, well, based on everything you know now since then, is there anything you would have done different? Right? And those are ways that you can really dig in and see what growth people have had if you already have a great first front end behavioral style interview question. So that's why it's really important to be able to, have a great interview process on the front end and train all of your interviewers, not just your hiring managers, but everyone that's going to be touching that candidate needs to understand the value of behavioral interviewing.
You mean I can't just talk to somebody because, I have a good read on people
Yeah, we're
and
vibes based
listen,
interviewing for
I know
sure.
in the first 5 minutes whether or not I'm going to like somebody. I don't need your fancy structure. I can't just do that.
Right, exactly.
Exactly
No,
what
you
happened.
certainly can. You can do that. That's a possibility, but as I'm sure it's happened where you might have made a bad hire or two in that event, right? And it's not to say that behavioral interview training will prevent 100% of all bad hires, right? But the better you get at behavioral interview training, the more you'll be able to spot inconsistencies with candidates and their answers, right? And it's interviewing is a learned skill. It's not something that you just pick up right away. It's like from a interviewing candidates interviewing with hiring managers is also a learned skill. That's why sometimes people are just bad interviewers. So if you're a good person that asks questions really well, you can get those bad interviewers to become good candidates based on how you ask your question.
Yeah, because not everybody is a professional, interviewee, right?
Right.
If you're hiring somebody in a skill set that is completely different than what would make them successful in their interview, I mean, you can lose some really wonderful people simply because you were lazy and didn't put in the work to make sure that you kind of helped them and guided them along the process. It's not, objection leading the witness, right? It's not
Right.
quite to that effect, but you can at least help and get them where they're going to be able to share their best information simply because you know what the job entails and what is going to make somebody successful.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then when it comes to having your entire interview panel, everyone that touches them shouldn't be asking the same questions, right? You should be evaluating across a totally different spectrum, right? Where you as a hiring manager want to know, hey, give me some examples of where you've done what I hope you can do in this job, right? And then for your cross-functional interviewers, that a lot of what they're going to be digging into is, how do you manage your stakeholders? How do you work with other teams? Give me some examples of where you've worked with a cross-functional team that's like us, right? Whether it be project management, product, software engineering, anybody, right? And so giving those examples and allowing them to dig into how they manage those relationships or resolved conflicts between those groups, right? How you mean you have a different requirement than what I thought it was? Oh my gosh, how do you handle that? So a lot of that is what you want your other interview counterparts in the process to be able to go into. So that way you have a fully fleshed out interview process, and making sure that everyone in that process knows, because the last thing you want to do is be interviewing a salesperson, right? And then they meet someone on the other team that isn't supposed to evaluate their sales. And their feedback is, yeah, I like them, but I don't know what their sales like mentality is. It's like, well, that's not what you were interviewing for. That's bad feedback, right? It's making sure that everyone knows their lane and does their best to dig into those lanes.
Definitely. So I know that you have been involved in revamping hiring systems for companies. What are some of the common issues that you see, and how do you approach fixing those?
Reporting metrics is the
Mm,
number one problem that you run into. Everybody likes data and likes the idea of it. Not everybody knows the best way to find it,
mm,
let alone create reports on it, right? Like, what is important? For some places, it's time to hire, which is the time that you speak from a candidate to the time that they get placed. Sometimes it's time to fill, which is the date that the job is approved to the date that someone's butts in seat, right? So there's a lot of different metrics, and making sure that people understand what those metrics are important to the business, and then how do you go about reporting on them. Some of them are easy, right? Like that, the approved open to time to fill. But then if it's long, now what do you do?
right.
I don't know why it's long. Where was the hole in the process? Was it from the hiring manager? Was it from the recruiter? Was it from what have you? And so if you're not tracking everything in between, that time to fill metric is bogus. It doesn't tell you anything, right? So, and then if it improves from one to the other, you don't know why it improved. And if it gets longer from one quarter to the other, you're wondering, "Oh my gosh, what went wrong?" And that's why you got to track everything, right? So data entry is something that a lot of people don't like, but if you just get into the habit of making data entry, and a lot of times you can set up these systems to automate a lot of these processes as long as you put in the right data, and you'll get great reports out of it so you can understand where everything went wrong because your time to fill is too long.
So conversely, if your time to fill is great, but your quality of candidate is garbage because they're so focused on time to fill, get somebody in the seat, then you've got, your problems there as well.
Yeah, and that's even on the back end,
Right.
right? Like that's where, hey, we got somebody in less than 30 days. We beat the industry standard by 15 days. Heck yes, this is awesome, right? And then you're firing them 60 days later because they weren't good. That means your interview process, like somebody didn't do their job,
Yes.
whether it's the recruiter, the hiring manager, your cross-functional panelists. And it might be because we didn't talk about what people should talk about in the process
Mhm.
and make sure that they're trained properly in behavioral interview training. So, agreed, tracking who's been on those panels. I've been in some places where that isn't easily tracked. And then if there's a sub, there's no way to tell if that sub's been trained in how to interview. So they just come in willy-nilly. It's like, yeah, I'm just going to give them my normal spiel, and it's, hey, tell me about yourself. Cool, that's great. I like doing that too. So,
Yeah. We talked a little bit about this before. Why is tell me about yourself such a landmine of a question?
right. Well, it's literally something that everyone, almost everyone asks, and it's so broad it's really tough. Like my coaching to candidates are, hey, my name's Larry, and I'm excited to interview. A little bit about me is I'm a software engineer, or for if it's about me, I'm a recruiter. Recently laid off due to the company not hitting revenue, and excited to help you out. Is there anything in particular you wanted to know about, right? And then just turning it back to them,
Yeah.
because the best way to phrase that is, hey, tell me a little bit specifically about what I want to know about, right? Like, hey, tell me why it is that you're on the market, right? And be more specific.
Yes.
So if it's just a general tell me about yourself, that a lot of times I also hear that the hiring manager didn't look at the resume and they use that as a
Mhm.
time sink. So yeah, and if your goal in the first 5 minutes of an interview is to establish rapport, there's a lot better questions than to say, tell me about yourself.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, and I appreciate you sharing that because obviously our goal and our hope is that our HR friends are watching this, right? And so any little bit of tips, and I've talked to some HR professionals recently that are kind of dipping their toe into recruiting and more of like a generalist role, maybe they're Department of One, something like that. And it is really not just having a conversation with people, and that's what a lot of people don't understand about good recruiting, right? And
Right.
then on the candidate side, if you don't know, I mean, we're HR people interviewing, right? We know what that question means. If you don't know and somebody said, tell me about, like, I did this with my kids. So
Yeah.
my daughter is 17. and my son is 20, but I talked to them about resumes and, what my son was going to do this summer. And of course, I'm, the big nerd mom, whatever. But when I said, what's your opener? What are you saying about yourself? They're like, well, I graduated Springboro High School and I did. And I was like, okay, how is what you're doing now in school relating to the job that you're at?
Yeah.
They don't care that you grew up there. I said, you need to connect it to what's actually, I said, because you're going to lose them. I said, or you're going to get somebody who's like, oh, wow, well, I know some people there. And now you're talking in a whole tangent off to the side. It's kind of like the resume, right? Like you need to make very good use of the real estate on the page. In the
Right.
interview, you need to make really good use of the time that you have with the person.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So a lot of pre-work goes into it on both sides, right? It's like the bare minimum you hope is that the hiring manager took 2 minutes to scan the resume and highlighted or marked a section that's like, I want to talk about this point,
Right.
right? And the sad truth of it is if you're doing that, you're in the top 10th percentile of all hiring managers, right? If that's all you've done is look at the resume 2 minutes before, it's like, I want to talk about this, right? You're already better than most out there, right? So it's a scary thing. And then from the candidate perspective too, you definitely want to make sure you've done your homework on the company. If you do know who the hiring managers or the interviewer is, do some research on them. Find their LinkedIn profile. Do a Google search.
Yes.
It'd be really funny to see, what pops up when you Google search the people you're interviewing. You might find something that makes you think, oh, maybe I don't want to work here, right? So doing that research is key on both sides of the interview.
Well, and you can ask ChatGPT or Perplexity or whatever, and you can
Yeah.
tell them who you're interviewing with and the company and be like, tell me, I asked it before to tell me about the leadership style of
Yeah.
the person I was going to be talking. And they were like, this is their reputation in leadership. And I'm like, that is fantastic.
Yeah. I didn't even want to broach Gen AI because we can go down a huge rabbit hole
Huge
there.
rabbit hole.
But yes, if you're not using Gen AI to help you in your job search or your resume, then
Yes.
you're doing it wrong. Now, at the same time, you can certainly use Gen AI to create a bad resume,
You
right?
definitely can. Yes.
So I've seen one of my great friends, Trent Cotton, who helps me with the Atlanta recruiter community meetup. He likes to tell this story, and he tells it way better than me. But he thought, oh my gosh, this candidate used a semicolon properly. I need to talk to this person. Within 20 seconds, he knew instantly this person does not know how to use a semicolon
Yes.
properly.
Yes.
Right? Make sure your resume reflects you and not the Gen AI version of you, right? We love those action figure versions of ourselves, but those aren't interviewing in the interview.
Right.
So,
Yeah. Please don't bring the aspirational version of you to your interview because
right.
you're not going to be able to keep up that front the entire time you're on the job.
Right, exactly. So if you have a properly used semicolon in your resume, high likelihood that it's Gen AI.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, and there's nothing against templates and whatever, right? But I can vividly remember a candidate had used a template, which is fine. But the problem is they missed one of the brackets where it was like insert blah 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 whatever about experience here, and it literally had the bracket with the. And I was like, okay, so attention to detail, maybe not quite there on this
Yeah.
person, right?
Well, and what you hate to see is someone say I have good communication skills on their resume, and you can instantly say nothing in your resume tells me that you have good communication skills or attention to detail. And soft skills like that should be heavily inferred, right? If you have to explicitly state I am a good communicator, you're probably not a good communicator, right? Like it's like the liars in the room are the ones that always say trust me. And it's like what? Why do you have to make sure that why are you reinforcing that with me?
Yeah. Or
So,
they say, I'll be honest with you. And I'm like, wait, were we not honest
right,
before?
right.
What? Yes.
Do you lie to everyone else?
You're going to be honest with me? Good. Because but the other people, they're fair game. Got it. Okay.
Right,
So
yeah.
between you and
Perfect.
me, we're honest. Okay.
I'm in the inner circle.
In the inner
Perfect.
circle. Exactly. Circle of trust. I'm in it. Good to know. But the rest of these people lying to all of them. Got it. Okay. Well, now I know.
Love it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we all got to where we are today because somebody climbed the ladder before us and turned around to offer a hand up. Who would you say has had the most impact on your career that you want to give a shout out to right now?
I would probably say the most pivotal moment in my career was Emily Steger going out on a limb, hiring this agency recruiter that had no interest in fashion, or Emily Forbes now, to join Spanx. And to this day, I still remember having that interview with her. And Emily goes, Larry, we're looking to hire a lot of tech people, and we need somebody that knows tech. I don't know a ton about tech, and that's why I need to just trust you. And then we're also doing a new ATS implementation. Would love a partner in that, all that stuff. And somehow I impressed her enough that she wanted to extend the offer and hire me, and that's been one of the biggest changes in my career. Another honorary mention is Alex Daniels, who was the one that brought me into recruiting in the first place, and we still chat on a regular basis. Even when I was laid off from Slalom a little over a year ago, he was like, "Hey Larry, if you want to work, if there's some roles that I got, work on them, and we'll work out where we can pay you a higher commission rate because you're not a full-time employee and we don't have to give you benefits. So we'll just give you the flat straight commission 1099." And I'm like, hey, that was a huge help. And if it weren't for people like Emily and Alex, who knows where I'd be today. I mean, I'd probably still be recruiting, but definitely not making the steps where I'm at now. And today I have to thank them every time I make a post about the Atlanta recruiter community. But Carrie, Kyle, Lisa, Fink, Trent, all those folks, and Jason, all those folks are like instrumental to the success of the meetup. So I can't thank them enough.
I love that. And we're going to link to all of those people in the show notes. And also, when we reshare this, we'll make sure that we tag those people.
Awesome.
So, if you're a nerd like me, or even if you're not, I think a lot of people are looking to learn something new. And I definitely have a spirit of continuous improvement. Is there anything that you are reading or listening to right now that you want to share?
Yeah. Fink and Trent, so Brian Fink and Trent Cotton both put out amazing content. Like if you're not following them, you're losing out, right? Especially when it comes to like latest tech in recruiting and HR, Trent's the go-to. Anything new and cool in recruiting, Fink is my go-to. And then what's great about both of them is they bring on different voices
Mhm.
and they incorporate different voices. An honorary mention on this too is the entire team at Hire Easy,
Mm,
Shannon Pritchett
I love her.
and Dan Harton. Like those two are putting out so much great content, so much support.
Yes.
It's awesome to see what they're doing for the recruiting community. So, and then once you go down those rabbit holes, you have so many other really great content creators that you will find. If you don't like all of them, one of them will at least be someone that you really enjoy. So, and learn a lot from.
Huge animal lover, and I've seen this orange cat behind you a couple of times now. We need
Oh,
to meet the orange cat.
yeah, that's Milo.
Oh my
He
gosh. Hi,
is
Milo.
Yeah, he's a dog in cat's clothing. He's never met a stranger. And so, yeah, he was just in my lap actually, and he got tired of that.
I love
So,
that. I saw him over your shoulder a little while ago, and I was like, be cool, don't react.
yeah, he's quite fun. The other one you probably won't see, her name is Panga. She's a gray cat, and she is a pet on her own terms. So,
We
yeah.
have one of those.
She'll let you know when she wants to be a pet. She'll let you know when she's not a pet. So,
Yeah. Yeah, we have one of those for sure. She will definitely give you the impression that she's a pet, but if you do anything pet like with her, it's a 70-30 chance that that's actually an allowed pet offense.
yeah. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So a lot of times people don't have a quantified ask. And the goal of this podcast is kind of share your story and share how we can help you. What is your specific ask of how this network can help you?
Yeah, so I put out a post earlier this week that kind of outlined those three pillars, and it was amazing to see the amount of outreach and people that are sharing job leads with me individually of like, hey, Larry, I saw this. I don't know if it's a fit, but check it out. You'll be able to tell me. And that is so huge. One, it makes me feel heard and noticed, right? Which is key, especially when you're in a job search, is you see rejection all the time. So any kind of lifeline you get from someone saying, hey, I saw this and it made me think of you is massive, right? That kind of reinforcement of, hey, people do care about me is huge, because you're not getting that from rejection emails, right? Most of them tell you, hey, you're not a fit. Some of them soften the blow. I'm a big fan of softening the blow. It's like, hey, this isn't the news that we wanted to share with you, but we went with someone else, right? So it sucks either way. It's not great to hear, no matter how softened the blow is. But having that counterbalance of people actively participating in your search is huge. Whether it's, hey, let's chat today and commiserate, or hey, I saw this job. Is it a fit? And not even asking, is it a fit? Just, I wanted to share it with you, sort of thing, right? That's all I can ask. I'm a huge believer of paying it forward too. So if there's anything that I can do to anyone out there and help them in their search, I'm more than happy to do that. Some things that just come to mind is some people that are great at paying it forward are David Marr. Another great one is Aaron Lentz. He's created this real-time list of TA and HR jobs. That's awesome. There's too many people to count, but the amazing people that are big believers of paying it forward and doing it on a regular basis is great to see.
Thank you so much for joining me and for letting me share your story and letting me kind of talk shop a little bit. I missed that. To our folks at home, if you enjoyed today's episode, please take a moment to subscribe to Amplify Your Signal and rate the podcast. Your support helps us get noticed and makes it easier for others to find these valuable conversations. Please connect with Larry. Larry, what's the best way to connect with you?
Yeah, LinkedIn. I am recruiter Larry Anderson is my URL. That's the easiest way to get a hold of me. Unless you're in Atlanta, then you can come to the Atlanta recruiter community the second Thursday of every month. Check out the meetup site to learn more.
There you go. Thank you, Larry, for sharing your insights with us today and for telling us a little bit about the Atlanta recruiting community as well. Thank you so much. And join us next time as we amplify voices, elevate stories, and support one another one episode at a time.
Awesome. Thank you, Nicole.
Thank you.
Pages blank, but hearts alive. Through their journeys, they still strive. Tales of passion, grit, and grace. Every journey